Hello, everyone. And today we have very interesting people here. And we have Olga. Olga, can you introduce yourself with your all academic credits, please?
Um, my name is Olga. I'm a sociologist. I'm candidate of sociology, trained as quantitative sociologist, and my dissertation was about generally lifestyle and social inequalities. And part of this lifestyle thing was the food thing and manners, and that's why I'm particularly curious about our today talk.
Yeah, and we have also Delomenie. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, so yeah, I'm Gael Delomenie, and I'm a practitioner in traditional Chinese medicine. I've got a diploma from the Wang Academy of Traditional Chinese Medicine in Toulouse, France. And I'm also a practitioner of Qigong and Kung Fu, which I also teach.
So today we're going to talk about connection between food and emotions that sound very strange. Yeah,
Does it?
Olga, does it? Yeah, you wouldn't think about connection between food and emotions, I think, except of when I'm sad. Oh, when I'm sad, I'm going to eat something, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
and
sugar
what makes
cravings
me
when you
happier
are.
is that, even if too much of it is not that good. Olga, you had questions.
Um, how do I start? First, I would like to set like the basic ground, if you don't mind, like
Okay.
what food is for the body and for a human being in terms of Chinese medicine. Because when I'm thinking about the, let's say, Western idea in my interpretation, it's rather some chemical reactions. And I would see a human body as an engine which you fuel with food and it drives, like better or worse. Yeah, so and there are some general rules like you need to intake less than you consume if you want to lose weight, and you need to balance proteins, fats, and carbs in order to be not only driving but healthy as well. And this is basically how it works. So it's chemistry, it's energy production from the nutrients, and these basic knowledges so that you balance like 2 or 3 components helps you to function efficiently and healthily. How does it work and how is it conceptualized in Chinese medicine?
Well, actually, it is pretty similar in a way because even if we don't think in terms of chemistry properly, because when Chinese medicine was discovered and created, chemistry was not exactly available at the time. That was not something that was really practiced apart from alchemy, which was the basics of chemistry, of course. But the principle is the same. The body, the human body, or like any animals or plants, needs energy, so needs chi. And basically, it's the same principle. Food is going to be fuel, and but it's like in a kind of rough state, and it needs to be refined to give you chi and energy, and to give the body the energy that is available for it to function. And so pretty much the same principle. If there is like enough energy, the body is functioning properly. If there is less, then the body will have to use its own reserves. That's exactly the same. The only thing that maybe we differ a little, and but I think even dietetic, modern Western dietetic would agree that an excess of one kind or even of any food will be a problem and will basically, as you said, you talked about an engine, like clog the engine. I did finish, so Olga, if you have any other questions.
Mhm. Yeah, I would just go on with my initial metaphor of the engine. If it's very similar for, let's say, my Western mind and Chinese medicine, I guess where the difference starts is not the general amount of energy, but the components which we are balancing. Like for the West, you have these million smartphone applications for managing your food. And there is this balance of proteins, fats, and carbs, like the general amount of calories you intake and like the water you drink. And basically, these are the three elements that you need to keep the balance of. What do you balance for your engine in Chinese medicine? Is it similar or different for you?
So the end result will be relatively similar, meaning that the intake of a human is basically the same, whereas you're seeing it through the prism of traditional medicine or Western medicine. But the intellectual process towards that result is a little different. Chinese medicine and Chinese like arts in general, which would be like medicine or philosophy or pretty much any base, is based, as you might know, on yin-yang theory and the five element theory. And so we consider that life as itself is a balance between yin and yang, a very specific balance between a light energy, yang, which will go like up, will be like hot fire, like something which is activating, which is moving, and another energy which will be more like material, going down, calming, and like containing. And so our food intake is supposed to match that, meaning that you need both food that is yin and both food that is yang to feed both of those processes. I'm not going to go too much in detail in that. Maybe we'll do that later. And then there is the five element theory, meaning that each element or movement, you would probably understand it better, is a kind of process that is going to feed one another in a circle, but also control one another in a kind of star shape if you want to like represent it graphically. And so some kind of flavors, that's the way you like analyze Chinese, the food in Chinese medicine theory, will have a link to one of those movements, one of those elements. And then with those elements and movements, we will try to repair the imbalance that is already in the body. Meaning, for example, if the wood is overtaking the rest of the, like, is too active, we will try to feed the metal that is gonna soften the wood and like calm it down to like keep it from burning the rest of the organism, for example.
So, sorry for the stupid question, but does it work like, it sounds like a very efficient thing and easy thing to use. Like if you know well enough which food stands for each of the elements, then like I'm burning with anger, I just take a food from the calming shelf, I eat something and I immediately like get back in peace. It doesn't work that simple, right?
No, obviously not. And that's the theory. And this theory actually comes both from dietetic and herbs medicine. Obviously, aliments like common food is going to be a much milder way to like create changes in your body. Whereas we have the exact same principle of nature and taste of the different herbs in Chinese medicine. And those could be like create a much harsher change. But to the throwback would be a potential toxicity, and especially if you use them wrong and so like change the balance in the wrong way, that can be dangerous. But yes, food is not going to be something that is going to change immediately. And it's going to obviously be something that is going to be really progressive. The body and all those balance in Chinese medicine have a certain inertia. And so everything is going to change at its own rate. And a good example for that is in Chinese medicine um, sorry, like I'm switching from French to English to in the diagnosis, for example, we'll often take the pulse, and the pulse is going to show us what's at one moment, like exactly what's happening in the body at the right moment. But the tone, for example, is going to show us what happened in the past few days and what has. So from the information we've got on the tone, which basically represents something that is in the past because it took time to change the color, the topping of the tongue, the shape of the tongue even, which this gives us information from what was a few days ago, and then we can compare it to what we feel in the pulse, which is how it is right now. And so we can assess how it has changed and in which direction this balance is going. Does it answer your question?
Yes, in a way.
In a way.
But it's
What
kind of a
precision do you
long
need?
question. I guess I
It
need to
is.
clarify all the questions I had in my head like for years. So, yeah, I see that there is this, as Masha told us before, that quick change is not the Chinese way.
Nope.
That any changes that happen to you in Chinese culture and Chinese philosophy and in Chinese medicine, I guess, are the slow and gradual change from
Well,
one point to another. And as if I understand you well, it's the same with the food. But the question is, how long does the change take and what does it depend on?
I will just clarify one thing. In Chinese medicine, we consider that violent change do exist too, and but most of the time they will be considered pathological. A violent change will provoke a violent reaction and a violent kickback in a way.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So this is considered to be a bad solution because most of the time it's not controlled and it's gonna have uh, bad consequences if the change happens too fast. Because again, this is a balance, and if you change one thing way too fast, it's gonna unbalance the whole rest. So, how long does it take is a very good question and one that I cannot give you a straight answer to because um, most of the time, if a change happens relatively fast, usually it can be balanced relatively fast too. Meaning, if you have a flu, like just a cough, and we treat you with herbs acupuncture, chances are it's gonna like resolve really quick because it's considered as an attack from the outside and it's still on the superficie, the outside of what we consider to be like different layers of the body. And so as long as it's outside and it's just attacking there, basically you can think of it as warfare and like the army that is inside is able to just like push them away easily. But if the disease has like a deeper root and has been something chronical and something that has been like taking a toll of the on the organism for quite a long time, then you can see it as a like guerrilla that has to like take a very long time because you will have to like fight it corner by corner, street by street. And so the deeper and the longer a disease has been installed, the slower the change will be.
Mhm. And it probably works similar with, how do I put it? I understand the disease thing, but there is the other thing related to, let's say, bad habits. Like you drink alcohol, you eat junk food, or you starve yourself, or you eat like whatever. And probably, I hope that even if you've been doing this long enough, it is still reversible. But the time you'll need to take to get the things back to balance will depend on how long were you poisoning yourself with all these bad things, right?
That's one of the point, obviously, and the other one is the resilience of your own body and spirit, which we are not equals. Like we know that we are not all equals in front of different substances or even different mind habits of the mind, and we all have like different patterns that we follow. If I would give an example, which I know really well because it's myself, for addictions, for example, tobacco was a real problem for me. Like I cannot tell, I could not. I stopped like 4 years ago now, 5 years ago. I'm really proud of that. But like I know that I was not able to smoke one cigarette and just say like I'm not going to smoke another one. That was something which I was really sensitive to. But for example, alcohol is not a problem for me, and I know it's a big problem for some friends of mine who have a real trouble and a real addiction to that substance. So we are really different, obviously. But yeah, the longer the pathology and the longer the bad habits, the harder and the longer it will be to fully recover. And like I would say that some habits will take a definite toll on you. Like there is no coming back completely from some habits. Daoist, some Daoist philosophy will say that a human is normally programmed to live 150 or 120 years. And anything under that is because you have not been taking care of your health properly. So they really think that basically if we go back to the machinist, which is not really what Daoists would appreciate, and I don't understand that, but like it's basically the machine is made to work that many years. And if you take a perfect care of it, then it's going to last that long. But obviously, the simple fact that the weather is attacking us, sometimes you're cold, sometimes you're too hot. The food that is available is not always the healthiest, is not always in the right quantities, is not always balanced enough. And this will take a toll and deplete what Chinese medicine considers as jin, which would be the fundamental energy of your body. And this, according to Chinese medicine and to the Daoist precept, is a finite quantity of energy that you get at birth, and that is slowly burning. And what you can do to prevent it from burning too fast is give it food and air, basically the chi that you get from the outside, and just like put a little drop of it sometimes and just prevent it from burning too fast. But you're not stopping it from burning, which is the normal cycle of birth, life, and death.
Mm-hmm.
I think I digressed a little. Sorry.
Could you just elaborate a bit more about the habits which are not reversible? Like I'm sitting and hoping that, okay, I've had like the exciting past and now I can like calm down and get back to the healthy self before all this. But there are some things that are not reversible.
Again, these habits, and I cannot tell you like this one is reversible or that one is not, except for maybe like a physical injury. You would like if you chop a leg, it's not going to grow back. We're not lizards. For example, if I take someone who's been like I don't know smoking for years or an alcoholic for years, this again is going to have already depleted a part of this energy. So it's a little depressing to think that because you would think that, oh, then it's over. I already like shortened my life. In a way, it's right. But what is possible is to live healthily from now, meaning that if you change habits, then the time you have left, you will live it better and feel it like feel yourself in a healthier way. I'm not saying that there's going to be like if you practice like perfect hygiene and qigong and exercise and perfect like I don't say that what you did before or what one did before will not have an influence anymore. This is not something that is possible because life is a continuum, and what has been done still have an influence. The only thing you can do is changing your lifestyle to make sure that what you did have a lesser and lesser influence. But it's not as like imagine if you throw a rock in a pond. If you keep throwing rocks, then it's going to be messy and there's going to be waves, like really like anarchic waves everywhere. Now you stop and you just throw like one rock at a time to try to have like a really nice and clear pattern. For the surface to like go back to calm, it's going to take time. There's going to be again inertia in that. And the micro ripples are still going to be there after like a very long time. It's basically the same principle.
I see.
So maybe, sorry. Actually, Daoist give a way out of that, which would be like becoming what they call an immortal, enlightenment. And so basically, it seems that according to them, like there is one of the immortal who is an alcoholic and who was able to like transmute the alcohol into an elixir of immortality. And so basically what that represents, I think, is that they consider that it is still possible to attain enlightenment and immortality, quote unquote, even if you had like a mundane life before. And not only is it available to monks that have been meditating and praying their whole life, though they do caution and say that it is increasingly difficult when you go, like when you get older and the more you already depleted your gene.
I like this idea of alcohol as an elixir of immortality. Probably, if I don't manage to quit the habit, then I will switch to this concept and we'll try to make use of it then. Yeah, and now the next thing I wanted to ask you is kind of related to what we've just discussed. And this is closer to the announced subject of our talk, emotions and culture.
Yes.
As we know, now kind of the medical and the chemical part is more or less clear, but now we are moving to the society we live in. And we see that everything we experience and everything we feel is full of food. Like if you're sad, you're craving for sweet things. If you are exhausted, you are craving for meat or you don't feel like eating at all. If there is a wedding, there is plenty of food. If there is a funeral, there is plenty of food. If like any rituals, any emotions, any social and human interactions are, sometimes it seems to me that it's all about food. And it is
I
like,
think Chinese culture is not gonna get you wrong on that. Like Chinese culture is all about like getting together, enjoying yourself, and food.
yep, yep, yep. And it's like
After good work,
the
after hard work.
social chemistry of food to me looks a bit contradictory to the individual chemistry of food because like as an individual consuming food, I am let's say consuming it moderately and trying to balance the ingredients. The social chemistry of food is overeating, over drinking, overwhelming, whatever. When people get together, it seems like they are trying to kill each other with the food and drinks. How would you explain that? Why is this working this way? Or I'm wrong in getting the point of all these social eating things?
I don't think you're wrong. I just think that when we're in social gatherings, we are less conscious of our body because we are fully immersed in the interactions and the the purpose of the moment is that we have this like mental activity that goes toward socialization, talking, sharing experiences, laughing. And in those moments, the I think the consciousness of our body is kind of laid back a little. And so we just don't even realize that we're eating too much anymore. And the thing is, in those social events, most of the time, there is a lot of food anyways. And so as long as it's in front of you and appetizing and you're having a nice time, you're probably gonna mindlessly like pick something up and eat it because it's just delightful.
And the other thing is that being with other people really takes a lot of energy. So you need to fill it up with something, right?
Actually, that's a really good point. Like the mental activity of like high social events is definitely going to take a toll on you and need like energy. Though I will say that I really think that our minds and bodies kind of trick us in that way. And this is going to be like in Chinese medicine, those who have like already seen our like first lesson would remember that it's linked to like spleen and stomach system. And basically like spleen and stomach in Chinese medicine is not as a physical organ, but as a system associated to like the thought process. And so if you're overthinking, if you're like just um, having a lot of ideas going through your mind and like making a lot of like concepts, etc., this is going to take a toll on spleen and stomach. So many European people, like really, you're on that case, you're not an exception.
Oh, no.
Like we think too much, obviously.
Oh, yes, that's true.
And what was my point? Yeah. So spleen and stomach, especially spleen, when it's getting like a little weak, it's gonna ask for food. It's gonna like um, create this like craving, which is not really hunger, but the desire for food. And Chinese medicine makes a very big difference between like hunger and desire for food. Do you want to eat or do you need to eat? Are you actually hungry? And most of the time, the spleen is just because it's already a little weak, like triggering this desire for food. But the problem is that the intake of food, and especially of too much food when you're already tired, is just going to worsen the problem. Meaning, it's if we go back to like Western chemistry, it's the Krebs cycle, which is this um, like creating energy from something that is potential energy. But to extract this ATP, this energy from the food, you already need to use ATP and to use energy. And so the balance is first negative and then becomes positive. And so that's really what I understand as like, when you're like tired after sleeping and Chinese will say that, oh, this is your spleen that is weak. And so this is basically the system. I don't know if I'm very clear there. I'm going to try to like clarify that. I don't want to be like too specific, but yeah, basically overthinking is going to trigger the desire for food because the spleen thinks that, well, the spleen needs energy, but the intake of food, especially fatty and very sweet food, is gonna like take a toll on the energy of spleen and stomach. And so just increase the problem instead of solving it. And like, I don't know if you ever did uh, a fast for like, it doesn't have to be long, but you realize at one point that the real feeling of hunger actually comes much later than the desire for food. And often we think that we're hungry, you're like, oh, I'm hungry. But you can still go 3 days without eating, and it's not a problem. The body is not gonna like take a toll from that. That's okay. And I don't advise that for anybody. Like obviously some people will like fasting for some people is going to be extremely dangerous. Again, that really depends on the person. I was about to say patient, but yeah. So yeah, social excess food is definitely a trap.
Yeah, so it's like even more complicated balance because like an individual system, you kind of know the demands of your body and you can listen to yourself, you can adjust the foods that are better for you in your particular situation with your particular biography, and it's kind of
Exactly.
okay. But when you are getting social, you need to balance it with other people, you need to balance it with additional energy soaking activities,
Mhm.
and you need to somehow balance the traditions and the food which is like your eyes are consuming and your stomach wants to consume it again and all these things, so it makes it much more complicated, but that's what makes us social beings, right?
Yes. This is interesting because the attraction, you say like, oh, you're like consuming the food with your eyes. In both in Buddhism and Daoism, they would say that these are desires, these are like mental poisons. They would tell you because like this desire is never, this craving is never satisfied. And I think we can feel that. And that's exactly what pushes us to like, oh, that was good. I'm going to have another one and another one. Oh, I'm too full. Yeah, but it's good. I'm going to have another one. This is like the, again, a mental trick, a desire that is in part like consuming our jing by roundabout ways. But that's why they consider that as a mental poison.
And just to add to that, in some cultures, actually in many cultures, if you don't eat much, you are kind of offending the cook. So,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's another thing. You are kind of more than full. You like cannot handle the balance is kind of, it was getting up, 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 then down, down, down. It's like under the table, and you are that full that you cannot even function, and you still are supposed to eat because otherwise the cook will be offended. And it's you need to handle like the food which is definitely more than you can handle, plus you need to handle the unwanted emotions like guilt or shame or debt. So that's getting like, in this respect, being social being is nearly unbearable. So probably that's why we do not have these big social celebrations too often, because they are too energy consuming, right?
Those would be dangerous. And the interesting part is that you would think that Chinese culture is more mindful of that because that's part of the theory of like their traditional medicine. But what I've seen most of the time is that food is extremely important, and a high intake of food is in modern China, at least. I don't know how it was before. Is like regarded as something good. And so there is like those huge fast in huge feast, sorry, in restaurants with like all those different dishes. And like the common thing is that when you appreciate someone, you show them your like appreciation and love by taking food from the plate and putting it in their bowl. And I'm pretty sure that would be a problem if you don't eat it, because that would probably and possibly be taken as an offense too. So there is this like, oh, I like you, I'm gonna put you food. Oh, you gave me food, so I'm gonna give you food too. And the result is the exact same, that there is like um, way too high consumption of nutrients.
So now I'm, we are that close to emotions. And now
Yes.
I'm coming to the most personally important part.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the introduction will take a bit longer, but I'll try to put it like in the most clear way like I can achieve. So emotions and food. If I understood correctly from the lecture about energies, that there are these two parts of energy. So the one which we inherit from our parents, the one which we are born with, and it's kind of unchangeable in a way that we cannot add to it. So this is like the thing we have, and we have only, we can spend it, but we cannot add to it. And there is another part which is acquired with foods and air. And this is what we can develop. And this is how like we can add to this part of energy, and therefore to save the unchangeable part from being consumed too fast.
Yes.
Am I right?
That's perfect. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
so
again. This is like the basic principle. It's a little more complex than that, but like you need to go like in deeper theories. But the like accepted basic principle is this one. Yes.
So, and as far as I know, at least like in my experience in the texts I read, food is more often associated with, let's say, unwanted emotions. When we feel shame, when we feel anger, when we feel sad, like when I feel sad, I can crave for sweet things, for example. Let's take this example. And for me, it's like, I'm not sure what sweet is in Chinese culture, but in Western culture, sweet things are about childhood. It is like the guilty pleasure of you as a child when it's kind of everything is allowed, and that's when you can really enjoy sweets when you are the little girl, boy, whatever. And this craving for sweets for me could be something like the calling from this inherited part of energy. It's something you got from parents, and it's like being sad is stealing from this part of energy. And by craving for sweets, you want to somehow fill it up and to protect this inherited energy and to protect your inner child, if I may. So it's in terms of chemistry, it's kind of not good for your body. So it's these quick carbs which are turning into fats and which do no good to your body and which do not produce any valuable something. But emotionally, it's something like which you cannot replace with anything. Nothing can heal your light grief better than a sweet cookie from your childhood, right? So could you please, like the general, how do you feel about this idea and what sweet products are for the Chinese culture and for Chinese medicine?
So, sweet in Chinese medicine is associated to the earth element. So again, the spleen and stomach that we were talking about earlier. First thing first, one of the main thing about sweet is that it's gonna like give you an immediate pleasure. It's gonna like free endorphins, as you know, and so I think that's kind of a quick fix for so many of our emotions. And I would say in Chinese medicine, most of the time we would say that a craving for like sweets is coming from the spleen and stomach. But I really think that especially in modern societies where sweets are so available and so like common that we go towards that because nature gave us this desire because at one point it was important. And so basically, I would think that the trigger for sweets was really important in the past because we needed. Is it stable? Can you still hear me?
It got worse. It started to lag.
Okay.
So if you could repeat the last sentence, that would be cool.
So I think in an evolutionary way of thinking, like the desire for sweet and the fact that it gives us immediate pleasure was really important because finding fruits or finding like quick, quick sugar that can be assimilated really, really fast was a really interesting part in making the species live better and reproduce. And so I really think that it's just like that trigger that makes us just feel good in the moment. But then it becomes a problem because in our society, like fruits are not rare, and those really like um, uh, like raffinated sugars are really available. And so this is um, an old like principle that our body gives us a reward whenever we intake sugar. But that's definitely not the principle of Chinese medicine, they would tell you that it's more that the excess again of mental activity that is gonna trigger this desire for sweets, because once again this is impulse by the sweet. So does it have a root into childhood? I would I don't think I've ever heard or read any text in Chinese medicine which talks about that. So this is really, I think, an approach from Western medicine that is not really shared. Though I know there is like research in like Chinese, traditional Chinese, like psychology that is done now. And I don't think it's clear yet, so I wouldn't trust it completely. But maybe one day we'll make a bridge and find a common ground on that. It's possible.
Mm-hmm. Huh. So I guess the last question I have, it's kind of, I could probably come up with an answer, but I would rather give you the floor. Um, are there any, could you come up with any general recommendations? Like, I understand that there are no recommendations suitable to anyone, but probably there are
That's very
some like
important.
general lines of behaving, doing, thinking, whatever, to eat and therefore live with more emotional balance.
Mm. Um, well, I think that would, mm, like this and Western medicine will have basically the same principle, which is like variety and no excess. Like basically every text of Chinese medicine tell you, okay, if you have that problem, maybe you can take that. If you, but to really find balance, you need to have balance already in your food. And so that goes by like eating cereals, vegetables, a little bit of meat, enough enough liquids, and a little bit of all the taste, all like salty, sweet, bitter. Um, how is it in English again? Salty, sweet,
Sour.
bitter, sour, yeah, and piquant, like pepper. How would you say that taste? Thingy?
Let's
No,
just say hot.
hot. Yeah, hot. And like all those flavors are necessary to the body to function properly, as long as they are in like correct balance. Now, whether they are affecting emotions, once again, not directly. Like it has to go through the process of the physical form, and then the physical form will influence the intellect and the emotions. The opposite being true too. Like emotions are gonna like strengthen or weaken organs most of the time. Like high emotions will weaken some organs and create what we call like internal pathologies. Whereas like an imbalanced intake of food is going to be considered like an external pathology because like the problem comes from the outside. So it like the balance has to be found between those two.
Mm-hmm. And there are also some things, this is what immediately comes to my mind, what can immediately affect emotions are some culturally connected food emotion things. Like, for example, in Russia, there are I would say in USSR, there is this unbreakable connection between the New Year and what is the word, tangerine?
Yeah,
The because this was
little oranges.
the only part of the year when you could have them. And
Mm.
for me, when I smell tangerine, I feel the pre-New Year celebratory excited mood. So I can just keep a tangerine next to me. And when I feel somewhat not very well, until it didn't get too deep, I can solve myself with just smelling tangerine.
Yeah, well, that's I think that we all agree that smells definitely has an impact on emotions. This is not really developed in any like text that I've seen in Chinese medicine, but I know that some like modern holistic medicine uses like smell of like different flowers or like essential oils to trigger emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think that in French we have this expression which is like la Madeleine de Proust, like Proust Madeleine, which is like this little kind of cake. And it's basically what you said, like the text goes like he just like dips one of these little cakes in tea and eats it and is just like thrown back immediately in his childhood memories, and it's really immersive. And yeah, like a part of it is the um, like nature of the smell might have an influence by itself, but I think a lot of it is cultural, a lot of it is acquired, and once
Yeah.
again is going to be like part of the acquired part of both the physical part and the mind in, at least in Chinese medicine.
Yeah. For me, the good news is that according to the recent research, the smell does to our brain the same thing as the actual consumption. So smelling coffee and drinking coffee is the same for my brain. So
Mm-hmm.
this kind of smells can help with this no excess part of keeping balance of your food. So if
Yes.
you like crave for something sweet with a lot of calories, just smell it and it will be enough for your brain. Good if it's
Um,
true. Good if it's true, but
that
that
that that'd be awesome. I don't know if I can just smell chocolate without eating it. That would be very frustrating, I think.
yeah, but I guess we need to
But
arrange a special talk about the smells because it's huge and it's like
hmm,
I would say that there is some special chemistry and some special culture and
is
emotional layers behind the smell thing.
I would love to read about that. If maybe you can like send me some articles, I would be delighted to read that.
And if you could share some resources about how particular foods connected to the elements,
Mhm.
um,
There is
that would be also very helpful.
there are several books about traditional Chinese dietetic. I've got one here. It's by Philippe Siono and Richard Zagorski. And so Philippe Siono is a French writer, and it's called like the dietetic of Tao.
Uh-huh.
And that was actually my introduction to Chinese medicine and dietetic. And it's a really good book because it already has like the basics of Chinese medicine and really explain to you like all the functions of like the basic organs and especially skin and stomach because those are the ones that are really related to like food intake. And I think it's a really well made, and you've got like a few lists with what um, kind of like what type of food is like hot or cold or like the flavors, and explain to you like how to use them and especially create balanced balanced mix of food.
Thank you. I'll check it out.
My pleasure. Uh, as we were talking about emotion and the question didn't arise, there is one thing that I think is really important is the temperature of the food. I'm
Mhm.
not talking about the actual temperature of where you intake it, even if in Chinese medicine it's really important, but for other reasons. But the nature, like in Chinese medicine, we classify food in like nature, which is going to be like is it warm, hot, lightly cold, or very cold, and the flavor. The nature is going to be extremely important for emotions because, for example, if you consume a lot of hot food, then it's going to increase the yang and have the energy like goes up to the head and might trigger like very young emotion, like really high active emotion, like anger, frustration, etc. But the opposite is true too. If you consume like too much cold food, then it's gonna um, like give rise to like yin emotion, so which could be like fear or like sadness, which
Mhm.
which are gonna the opposite like close you, like put you down. So I think that's one of the most important things that should be um, taken from Chinese dietetic is that you really have to balance how like hot food and cold food, and really know already like if you need more heat or more cold in your own body. And even if you need cold, for example, don't eat only cold. Like it still has to be balanced with some hot. It just means that you need to make food that is slightly imbalanced towards cold, but not completely cold, because otherwise you're gonna like block a lot of mechanisms by introducing pathogenic cold inside your system. Same for heat, obviously, like that works in both ways.
Yeah, that's good that you added that, because
I think it's very important.
It's very important. That's true. And I'll need to read about what is, I can imagine what is the hot food, like the spicy food or something, but what is cold food? No
if you
idea.
if you take salad, for example, like just like green leaf, most of the time it's not an absolute rule. Most of the time this is going to consider like fresh or cold, well, slightly cold or cold. And but for example, an interesting thing is that if you've got a cold element, let's take like spinach. Spinach is, I have a doubt, but I'm pretty sure that spinach are cold. If you take them like straight raw, it's like for someone who already has like a weak stomach and cold inside, this might be a problem. But if you just like reheat them a little, at least it's gonna balance that. And so eat them hot and like stir fry, it's gonna balance the nature of the food. And same, for example, if you like eat a very like young type of meat, if you eat it cold, it's gonna balance slightly. But again, this is a really subtle art, and that I think might at one point like give the problem of overthinking, because at one point I was like overthinking what I was eating and realized that it was a problem. So it's interesting to like dive into it, but it's very important to like take a step back from it and not like obsess over it, because it's going to be the exact same principle as people who are like obsessing about like, oh, how many calories did I take, like did I take like enough of it, did I have like enough vitamins, did I, like some people are just going to hurt themselves because they are like overthinking it and just obsessing about it. So a very important thing is like avoid excess in any ways, and especially obsession is an excess itself. And this is really important to avoid it. And I think in our modern society, it's often a problem associated to dietetic and food.
Yeah. As for me, I see it rather as a guideline, as a map, if I may, like as a map of a sky with the stars, where you know what the stars mean, and you can combine the stars your own way, but
Yes.
so that you have your own map. But
I love it.
you understand what the stars mean, and you avoid like, you don't get into the black hole because you know what are the consequences, what the consequences are. But otherwise, you can dive through the sky your own way, just understanding that there are these general flags or something.
Yes, and especially like it's important to like know what are like the do's and don'ts. Obviously, that's definitely what's gonna help you, like you said, like not fall into a black hole, not fall into like a pitfall of an excess or another.
Yep. So I'll go have a tiny cookie then. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this conversation. And
Thank
it was
you
very
too. That was really interesting, and I wish we can do that again. That would be really lovely.